He is declining at such a slow pace that people are actually sitting around going, is he getting better? Which is impossible, but he's making us imagine that. How could he be having a bad year?
It does raise an eyebrow that he gets better as everyone gets worse. I'll leave it at that.
What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV, aka Darth Apocalypse. So, recently, Stephen A. Smith issued an apology to Kyrie Irving for his earlier rants or earlier uh, public condemnation of Kyrie Irving as, quote unquote, if I remember correctly, pushing I guess, a radical and dangerous agenda, I guess is the way you could put it, as far as with the COVID vaccine. All right. Now, we all know that recently Dr. Anthony Fauci was called on Capitol Hill. I think these hearings were led by Rand Paul, a senator from Kentucky. And basically, Dr. Fauci took the fifth something like 111 times. And although taking the fifth technically isn't an omission of guilt, when done so, when questioned or questioned by lawmakers on Capitol Hill about pertinent information or situations involving the biggest pandemic to hit us in 100 years, both domestically and globally, it does raise eyebrows as to what they were telling us back then was truth when it comes to the origins of this whole thing, as well as the origins of the jab or the elixir and its efficacy. Because they were pushing it as a cure when we all know that, well, at least we should know, that viruses cannot be cured. The only thing that a vaccine can do is, A, help to prevent, for a while, temporarily, your body from acquiring a virus, and it can help to lessen the severity of an ongoing attack caused by the virus, but it cannot cure it. And this was the misleading information that we're leading. And I'm going to get to the meat of the coconut in a while. But channels like myself, and Town Biz, and 78 Sports, and some others, back in 2020, 21, we were all very critical and suspicious of what the government was telling us, right? But you got to remember, going into 2021, the administrations switched. They went from Republican to Democratic. And all of a sudden now, people who were skeptical of Trump and this whole thing, because Biden was in there, and they're Democrats, now all of a sudden they want to believe everything the fucking government tells us. Which definitely made this a partisan issue with some people, including people in our so-called community. Hell, I had almost had my channels taken down behind literally just giving information that you could read online. And I'm not talking about some rinky-dink sites. I'm talking about information that's being printed in the New York Times, information that's being printed in the New York Post, reputable information. But when I was reading it, verbatim, I was being labeled as giving out misinformation. It was shameful what YouTube did, Other people who were talking the same thing, who giving the same talking points and having the same suspicions, they had their channels totally taken down. And I don't know if YouTube ever let these people back on their platforms. And I don't think YouTube ever issued us an apology. So a segue to Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving was one of the biggest skeptics of what the government was telling us, and one of the biggest skeptics of the jab. Now, while Stephen A. Smith had no problems with people like John Stockton or, you know, Aaron Rodgers espousing their opinions about, you know, the jab being critical, he had no problems with them. But he did have a problem with Kyrie Irving. You explain that to me. And it wasn't just criticizing Kyrie's opinion. He was slandering Kyrie Irving. Remember his cohort on ESPN, Kendrick Perkins, said if Kyrie's brain was in a bird, it would fly backwards. But aren't you the same dude that always have these early season predictions go to pot, to shit? Didn't you say the 2021 Lakers was going to win 70 games? And they didn't even win half of that. So, you know, who are you to call someone stupid? Unbelievable. So, Kyrie Irving lost money, millions of dollars. If I remember correctly, he could only play in a handful of games because of the rules as far as involving taking the jab and, you know, playing basketball games. If I remember correctly, he could not play in the New York area because they mandated it, as did many people who worked their, you know, jobs, and they took it. And one thing in particular I want to mention is the connection between the jab and with young people. And then I'm thinking about this. I haven't forgotten to do that video that one of my subscribers requested. I'm just so behind in video requests. You know, I'm still trying to knock some of these things out. I've got a lot of them recently. But one of my subscribers talked about how the jab gave him cardiomyopathy. And that was one of the things that research was saying, that this jab seems to give a lot of young people issues with coronary conditions, but in particular, African Americans. And that's what they were hiding. That's what they were hiding, ladies and gentlemen. But Kyrie did his research. A lot of us did our research. And that's why we were very suspicious about it. And the fact that the government made you take that damn thing. When we've had pandemics before, aka plandemics, but the government never, they may have mandated we quarantine, but they've never mandated a jab. Never. So they waited for Kyrie to do something that was completely random and unimportant, which was sharing a link to a movie. And they feigned disgust and outrage a certain community, and they went out there and used that as a smokescreen, a cover issue to punish him further. And that's when he had to pay even more in fines, more in millions, had this ridiculous list from the Nets owner to live up to as far as what you got to do. He had to do like 26 different tasks to get in people's good graces, you know? And it was insane, man. And Stephen A. Smith was one of the biggest critics until after taking the elixir, he got sick again. And then he got critical or skeptical of the whole situation. And as more information has come out, then he issues his apology in hindsight. But who cares when the damage was done? Because the space was so loud with condemning Kyrie 3, 4 years ago. And it's one solo apology. And everybody else is quiet. And that's why I can't stand the media.
He did that on his own merit, or somebody told him to do that. But obviously, to give context, Kyrie Irving, a couple years ago, refused to get the vaccine in the state of New York. The state of New York said all employers or whatever had to. Therefore, he wasn't able to play basketball for a large amount of that season, which affected like millions of dollars. He lost sponsorships. He lost his Nike endorsement. And then forget the money, like the people who like said all these things about Kyrie and his character and, even probably people close to him. I couldn't even imagine about how that experience probably went, because all of the stuff that was, obviously there's, things that happened medically that, affected the United States, but also was some misinformation that was going on. And then during the trial, Dr. Fauci pleaded the fifth on everything. So it just leaves speculation to like how we evaluated, some of the stuff, what was real and what wasn't. But for Stephen A to respond and actually apologize to someone who was, his career changed, his pockets changed, people defaced his character, even though, obviously this is going around, like giving the apology. I know maybe some of you have seen it, but imagine going through that and imagine losing hundreds of millions of dollars for what you believe in. Imagine losing endorsements. Nike dropped them. That's when I responded, like, since when did Nike care about ethics, right? Imagine these companies and these things that just completely, blackballed or, dropped Kyrie. The Nets made him, they gave a list of demands for him based upon, it was just, I thought this was, for Stephen A to even say that and issue an apology, I will give him some credit for that. But he was one of the people, if not one of the main proprietors, that was saying these things. But the apology is never as loud as the vindication. So I just wanted to give, to react to this. Obviously, I know that was a long time ago, but that was a very, very important and controversial time in the U.S., the vaccination.
Yeah, so, look, man. I'll give Stephen A this. He did at least come out and apologize. I give him that. It was much too late. You could argue that, that's in line with Stephen A straddling the fence, going where the wind blows, whichever way the wind blows, I should say. That's very, that would be a very credible take on this situation, because he does do that. But at least he did offer an apology. I don't recall, unless you show it to me, I haven't seen anybody else do that. I haven't seen anybody else who were criticizing Kyrie, and Monica McNutt, I'm looking at you. You can do segments getting your nails done because you're all about you and how you look, and you think you're so cute on television. But you could be a serious journalist and issue an apology to Kyrie too, because you was up there too. I remember all of you guys were up there. Kendrick Perkins too. But, that's the thing. The media always wants to be right. The imperial media, the fourth estate, they always want to be right. But anyway, shout out to Kyrie Irving, man. One of the few that's real. Tell me what you guys think.